Our top story this half hour, from the NFL to Congress. Former linebacker, civil rights attorney, and Obama administration alum Colin Allred. He's ready to tackle Washington. Allred is looking to take on Republican Pete Sessions in the Texas congressional district that includes North Dallas. Colin Allred joins us now. Good to see you this morning. So Hillary Clinton did win your district in last year's presidential election. What's your shot right now? What are your chances? And the state of Texas increasingly is turning blue.
Good morning, Dagan. Well, I think that as someone who was born and raised here, I've seen some incredible energy here on the ground since this election. Almost every week, I talk to a different group that didn't even exist before the election, and people are really activated, and they want to get involved, and I think that's a great thing. It's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for Texas, and I think it'll be a good thing for 2018 as well.
Colin, talk about the issues, though, that matter to the voters in your district, your potential constituents, because I think that Texas is a really good microcosm of what the Democrats nationwide need to focus on, because there are certain issues in Texas that the voters really care about that also relate, where there could be a move to the middle, if you will, by a Democratic candidate like yourself.
Well, you know, I've been having weekly coffees with Colin where people come out to a local coffee shop and talk for about an hour or an hour and a half about the issues. And the number one things that I've been hearing are health care, the economy, obviously making sure that we get wage growth going, making sure that this recovery from this recession reaches all of our folks here, and education, whether that's pre-K through 12th grade or higher education. And I think it really all boils down to opportunity. I think the people here are concerned that opportunity is disappearing, that the American dream is getting more difficult to achieve here. And as someone who has lived the American dream growing up here, I'm really focused on restoring that.
Colin, Mitch Rochelle, one of the things that we saw in the general election was when you campaign and your entire strategy is to say your opposition is bad and you don't articulate your message in terms of what you stand for, it sort of backfired. So in terms of your message, are you going to focus on sort of those issues that you're pulling out of those coffees, or is it going to be a lot of the, you know, we don't like what's going on in Washington and this guy's not good and that guy's not good?
Well, I think anytime you're running against an incumbent, there's always an element of talking about their record and what's happened. But I think it would be a big mistake to only talk about what we're against in this election. I've been talking about what I'm for, excuse me, and where I think we should go here as a region and as a country. And I think that's what people want to see and what they want to hear. People are so concerned about what's going on right now, and they're so concerned about the future that if we're not addressing that, then I don't think we're going to be able to be getting our message through very well.
Texas 32, as I recall, is so red that the Democrats didn't even field somebody in 16, and the last time they did in 14, Sessions beat him 61-35. So I'm curious what you see as your path to victory here, because it's still a pretty red district.
Well, I think it's the same path to victory that it always is here in Texas. Our goal has to be to expand and diversify this electorate to make sure that our electorate looks as much like the community as possible. But I do think that we have to all say that there's a different scenario on the ground here now. There's a reason why Hillary Clinton won this district in 2016, and there is something happening here that's different than any year that I've been around here. And I did voting rights work here in 2014, and I've never seen the energy that I'm seeing now. And so I think that we all have to also recognize that this is not a normal year. This is not going to be a normal election year.
Colin, there are about a dozen Obama administration alums running for office, including yourself. What do you make of that trend?
Well, you know, I think a lot of us had it, kind of pushed into us so much, the idea of public service and the idea that this is not about us. It's about the people that we're working for. It's about the people who are relying on us to get the job done on a day-to-day basis. When you're in the administration, you have to do that. It's a little bit different than maybe some of our members of Congress who can cast some of these ceremonial votes. People are relying on you to get the job done and to deliver for them. And so I think that's what we're trying to do. But I also think that, as I mentioned earlier, this election has to be about the future. It's not going to be about who you worked for in the past or the position that you held.
Well, Colin, one thing that's notable is that since you've been on, it's roughly like about 8, 7 minutes, you haven't bashed President Trump. And I think that maybe that's something that Democratic candidates are learning, that doesn't really resonate. You saw that in the special election down in Georgia, for example, that kind of slogan of like make Trump mad, or what was the slogan, make Trump angry again or furious, that just did not resonate, and people just don't care.
Well, I actually think that in a lot of ways President Trump is ever present for folks. He is, dominating the news. Every time they open their phone, they're reading news about him. And at my coffees with Colin, people usually don't ask me about President Trump. Their questions are about some of the things we already talked about, healthcare and the economy. And I think it's partly because he's so ever present, and they want to know, what are we going to do to cut through some of this noise and to get some work done for the people of the area.
Well, speaking of noise, there's been a lot of noise and a lot of uproar around Colin Kaepernick. Whether you favor what he was doing in terms of the national anthem or not. And there were hundreds of people gathered here outside of NFL headquarters in New York yesterday. The protesters are accusing the Football League of blackballing Colin Kaepernick, former San Francisco 49ers quarterback, for his national anthem protest. If you were still in the NFL, how do you feel about this, Colin? Do you feel like that Kaepernick's being treated unfairly by the league, or that this is just he took a stand and there's fallout from it, and also it's about his play on the field, whether he has a job or not?
Well, I think it does often come down to the play on the field, but I actually think in this case, Colin had played well enough to have a job right now. I don't think that there are 32 teams who have 3 quarterbacks on their roster who are better than Colin Kaepernick, so I'll say that first and foremost. But I think no matter how you see his protest, I think all of us as Americans need to be able to get behind the idea that he had a right to do it. That's our First Amendment, and I think it's our First Amendment for a reason. And as a civil rights attorney, I certainly want to make sure that anybody is able to express themselves without having repercussions in their job, as long as they're doing it in a peaceful and constructive way. And I think that in a lot of ways, Colin has started a discussion that we're having right now because of the stand that he took.
Colin, Ryan Knutson here. I'm curious, NBA players have taken more of a public stand. You've seen LeBron James come out and talk about stuff. Steph Curry put some pressure, as I understand it, on the Under Armour CEO to step off of Trump's CEO council. How is the culture different in the NFL, where coaches and players are talking about what Kaepernick is doing as a distraction, and coaches wanting to keep a distraction out of the locker room, when you're seeing that happen in other sports?
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is an inherently conservative organization. It just is. From the ownership to the coaches to the players, everything is focused on limiting distractions, keeping the focus on the field, because it is kind of the ultimate team sport. You have to have 11 guys operating in exact synchronicity to get the job done. And so I think that's part of why that is. But I also think that the NFL has traditionally taken a hard stance on some of these things, and maybe that's also why we're seeing such a backlash here with the Kaepernick issue.